2009 on TSN is brought to you by the new Q horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.
This was yours truly back in the fall of 1987 when this program debuted as Motoring 88. It was the first time I'd ever been behind the wheel of a Porsche, a car we had to beg, borrow, and steal from a dealer who never heard of motoring. And you know, Porsche likes to say that the first time behind the wheel of a Porsche, well, it is without a doubt a life-changing event. You know, this car is really going to spoil me. Well, I think that might be a little dramatic, but for me, the love affair certainly began. And you know, Porsche over the years has introduced different models, the Boxster, the Cayman, the SUV, the Cayenne. But this week, we're at the Miller Motorsport Park just outside of Salt Lake City to check out what Porsche believes is the core vehicle in its lineup, and that is the 911.
I think 911 has always been the core element of the Porsche model line, and especially in the last couple of years with the addition of the Cayenne, people thought, okay, now they are focusing some other cars, but the 911 always has been the core element of whatever Porsche wanted to do and what Porsche will be doing in the future. So this generation that you're actually driving in today is the 6th generation of the 911 Carrera, and obviously the biggest challenge was to actually include more technology into the car at the same time, not increasing the weight, also reducing the fuel consumption, and obviously, like always, improving the performance levels. Obviously, you try to make the car more comfortable for some customers, but at the same time, you also have to increase performance levels for racetrack enthusiasts, for people who take their car on the racetrack during the weekends and really enjoy getting their car to the limits.
You know, for many years, if you drove a Porsche, you're driving a manual. But back in around 1983, Porsche introduced its first automatic. And believe it or not, almost 70% of Europeans are driving automatics. Well, this new 911 comes equipped with something called PDK. It's a double clutch system. And Porsche is convinced that it is faster than a manual transmission, and it's here to stay.
The PDK actually is a manual transmission, and it's not just one, it's 2 manual transmissions that are built into one housing. So you have one manual transmission with one clutch and the gears 1, 3, 5, 7 and the reverse gear, and a second transmission with one clutch and the gears 2, 4 and 6. And they both work seamlessly together, and for that reason there's never an interruption in drive and power.
The next gear is always engaged. So all it does is one clutch disengages at the same time the other one engages. So there's no shifting time taking place.
Well, the car isn't that much changed. The chassis, etc., is minorly changed. The engine's got a few more horsepower. The big addition is, of course, the PDK transmission. It's a big boost for Porsche. This one leapfrogs most of the other manumatic transmissions. Is now a 7-speed. It's a dual clutch system, so it shifts very smoothly, but at the same time it's very quick. It's a much needed boost to their portfolio.
130 and 140 miles an hour.
There is a lot of technology in the cars now, stability management systems, suspension management systems, all kinds of technology to help you drive the car to its full potential. You know, it was like me and 3 other guys in the car driving. There was the guy looking after the engine, there was the guy looking after the suspension, the transmission guy, he was terrific, and then basically it was, okay fella, you just steer the car and we'll look after the rest,
Yeah, I remember what the old Porsches were really like to drive, and they were beasts, and they weren't fun, and they were dangerous, and they scared you all the time. So if you like being scared, sure, yeah, you miss it. I just like going fast. I'd rather go fast than be scared.
And it makes us look good out there, doesn't it?
Oh man, I'm looking hot out there. I have a full head of hair. That's how good this car makes me look.
And there's your lap at Miller.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Hey, smiling.
How can you not smile with a car like this on a track like this?
One of the things that I find really sensational about these vehicles is that, I'm driving cars that you can just go into the showroom and you buy the car and you can drive it from the showroom through town to a racetrack and then get on a racetrack and perform like a race driver. you know? I mean, it's right out of the box like this. You don't have to do anything to the car. If only we could all afford one.
I can tell you one thing, I'm charged up. More later on Kenzie's Corner.
On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at the Pontiac G8. Now, this car hails from down under because it's very heavily based on the Holden Commodore. It promises to be a fast and fun test drive. The rear-wheel drive Pontiac G8 replaces the Bonneville and Grand Prix, both of which were front drivers. As such, it has large shoes to fill. That, however, will not be a problem. To begin with, the look is all Pontiac, but unlike the cars it replaces, it's not so overly loud you need a paper bag. The G8 also benefits greatly from the platform donated by the Holden Commodore. It has a long 2915mm wheelbase, a wide track, and it's stiff enough to provide a solid base of operations for the suspension. The inside of this G8 has been very nicely finished indeed. The seats are superb, the materials are very good, and this centre stack, in spite of its rather busy look, is intuitive. There are, however, a couple of pet peeves. First of all, the A-pillars are too big, the side door mirrors are a little too small, and these power window switches belong on the door. Then you get to this. This one does everything except the glove box. This one does the glove box. That's dumb. Riding on front McPherson struts, multiple rear links and anti-roll bars at both ends, the G8 is very definitely a driver's car. When pushed through the pylons, the G8 remained as flat as gravy on a plate, and thanks to the sensibly sized 245/45 R18 tyres, there's a ton of lateral grip. Few family sedans come anywhere near the sort of agility and civility that defines the G8. If things do go pear-shaped, the G8 comes with General Motors StabiliTrak. Now this thing is, without question, one of the best electronic nannies offered, and simply because it stays out of the picture until it's actually needed. On the flip side, the G8 cruises the highway in a comfortably serene manner. The bottom line is a balanced blend of handling and comfort. The back end of the G8 has been very well thought through as well. To begin with, plenty of head and leg room and enough width to carry 3 adults. There's also a 17.5 cubic foot trunk. The lone drawback? This is the only part of the seat that folds flat, so you have a limited access into the trunk. The tester arrived with GM's high-content 3.6-litre V6 engine. The use of variable valve timing brings a healthy 256 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque at a very low 2100 RPM. The very fact that the bulk of the power shows up so early makes the V6-powered G8 feel remarkably spry. Put a clock on it, and the kick off the line and on up through the mid-range is validated by the initial impression. It takes 7.6 seconds to get from rest to 100k, and it turns the 80 to 120 trick in an equally impressive 6.3 seconds. The 5-speed manumatic certainly helps matters, as it does a good job of keeping the engine in its sweet spot. Now, if this V6 engine isn't quite enough for you, there is a solution. It's called the GT. It brings a 6-litre V8, 361 horsepower, 385 pound-feet of torque. Now, if that's not quite enough, there is a solution. It's called the GXP. Now, this thing brings a 6.2-litre V8, 402 horsepower, 402 pound-feet of torque. It turns this G8 into a road rocket. The steering is also worthy of note. At load speeds you can spin the wheel with your pinky finger. Get up to higher speeds and the whole lot firms up to deliver the sort of feel and feedback one expects to find in a BMW. Ditto the anti-lock equipped brakes. Several full-on stops for a short average stopping distance of just 40 metres, which is very good for a 1,762 kilogram car. I like big brakes, and this has got them. This Pontiac G8 is a delightful car. It's got plenty of power, and that's with the V6 engine. It's got room for 5, it's affordable, and it handles like the dickens. What took GM so long?
Michelin, a better way forward.
A lot of people don't understand the importance of tire pressure. Tires are the cornerstone of safety. Everything that's on your car, from the airbags to the seat belts, is there to get your butt out of the fire when your tires lose contact with the road.
Yes, proper tire inflation is important, but human nature being what it is, few of us do the monthly check. Now, in the United States, tire pressure monitoring systems have been mandated beginning with 08 models.
Tire pressure monitoring systems being mandated is good for the industry, it's good for the consumer, and it's an additional safety feature on the vehicles so that the consumer has an alert, a warning if you will, when the tire pressure gets too low.
I'm sort of torn on it. I think it's a good idea in theory. I think that a lot of people are using it as an excuse to not check their tires.
We absolutely recommend that people continue to check their tire pressure manually, continue to make sure that once a month the tire is properly inflated, and that they use the TPS warning system just as an additional alert, an additional safety feature on the vehicle for those instances where you may have a more significant loss of pressure.
The most important thing is be proactive. Don't depend on this warning signal to tell you there's a problem. Find out if there's a problem long before that comes on.
We've been waiting a long time for the second generation of Insight to be launched, so we're very, very happy to see this car coming.
It looks too much like a Prius. And I just said to one of the executives earlier on today that why didn't they take it one step bigger and really make a difference to the Prius competitor, you know?
As you're aware, hybrids are still not a significant portion of vehicles being sold, and I mean, speaking for myself, four-cylinder gasoline technology has come such a long way in terms of its fuel efficiency that there's no longer that great a difference between a hybrid and a very well done four-cylinder gasoline engine, which both Honda and Toyota, of course, are the masters at.
And incidentally, if you're lucky enough to have enough money to buy a Porsche and you're not buying it just to be cool, I've recommended it before, make sure you join a club, a Porsche club, whatever. Get that car on a track like this. It's the only place, without losing your license, that you're going to experience all the technology that you're ultimately paying for. All right, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardner.
Yeah, I totally agree, Brad. Now, earlier in the show, we saw some information about tire pressure monitoring systems. How did those systems come about? Well, if you remember the Ford Explorer in the early 90s, those vehicles had a lot of problem with tire failures, especially in the southern states. We didn't have as much of a problem here in Canada because of cold temperatures, but in Texas and Arizona, New Mexico, etc., those southern U.S. states had a lot of tire failures, a lot of vehicle rollovers, people were injured and killed. The Clinton administration took stock of that situation and they brought out legislation called the TREAD Act. Now, TREAD stands for Transportation Recall, Enhancement, Accountability, and Documentations Act. And basically what that act requires is that vehicle manufacturers implement over a period of 3 years a system that to monitor and alert to the operator of the vehicle the fact that they've got a tire pressure situation going on in that vehicle. So what they came up with was a system to alert the driver if a tire was 25% underinflated or 50% overinflated. It would turn a light on the dash. Now, when you cycle the key on your vehicle to start it up, if you see an icon on the dash like this one, it indicates that you've got a tire pressure monitoring system on that vehicle. Now, They had to have 20% compliance in 06 models, 70% by 07, and 100% compliance on 08 vehicles in the States. Now, our vehicles in Canada are manufactured in many cases on the same assembly line, so in most cases we've got the same kind of equipment on our vehicles. It's an interesting system that kind of just appeared without us hearing a whole lot about it. Now, the guys at Schrader Bridgeport and APC, which is a parts jobber that I buy from in Southern Ontario, they had a training seminar for mechanics like myself to bring us up to speed on how these systems operate. Basically what we're going to do is go out to the left front wheel of this vehicle and look at some of the hardware that's involved with the system if it's got direct tire pressure monitoring. If it's got an indirect tire pressure monitoring system, it uses data from the ABS sensors. If it's direct, it's got a sensor located in each wheel that broadcasts a radio frequency signal, transmits a signal back to the body control module, the receiver, and it knows the tire pressure on all 4 tires. If your vehicle has direct tire pressure monitoring system, you're going to have a sensor located 1 per wheel on your vehicle. Now, you really can't see those sensors because when the tire is installed and the wheels on the vehicle, really all you see is the tip of the valve stem. The sensor is incorporated with the valve stem in most cases. On some Ford vehicles, it's wrapped around the rim underneath the band, but in most cases, it's going to be incorporated with the valve stem. So instead of having that floppy rubber valve stem, you may have a metallic shank to that valve stem, and it's much more rigidly mounted in the wheel rim. Now, when it's mounted, you're really only seeing the tip of the valve stem right there, but inside the wheel is the sensor assembly right here. This sensor has a battery inside it. It's got a little switch to allow the sensor battery to go to sleep when the vehicle wheel isn't rotating to save the life of the battery. These little sensors are anywhere from $100 or more per wheel, and they're pretty fragile, so when you're servicing the vehicle, you've got to be careful that you know the new procedure for tire service so you don't break or damage these sensors. It could be a real costly mistake. Now, I think this is a fantastic system that's really going to add a lot of safety to our vehicles. I'm really excited about it. I think it's a great step forward in safety and allowing drivers to know when they've got a tire that's underinflated. But don't throw away that tire pressure gauge. It's still a valid way to check your tires, and it's still going to be what you're going to have to use to back up the reading you're getting on the dash. Make sure you're checking your tire pressure monthly and that you've got a safe vehicle where all 4 tires are up to proper inflation pressure. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 2009.
Ladies and gentlemen, the future of driving and the future of Volkswagen belongs to a car like this. Our concept, Blue Spot. People have been waiting long for a true roadster from Volkswagen. And here it is, compact, emotional, and with a clear and strong Volkswagen design. A high-torque TDI engine with 180 dynamic horsepower makes Concept Blue Sport great fun to drive. And yet, this roadster sets a new benchmark in terms of efficiency and sustainability. Based on lightweight design, the world's most efficient and dynamic DSG automatic gearbox, and of course clean diesel technology. This sports car consumes just 4.3 liters per 100 kilometers, and that corresponds to an outstanding 55 miles per gallon. Minimum consumption and maximum fun to drive.
Closed captioning on Motoring 2009 is brought to you by the 2009 Chevrolet Traverse Crossover. It's everything you've ever wished for, and then some.
This is my new laptop computer. Well, it's a couple of months old. And it's got the double thickness battery on it there. You see those 2 little cylinders? Now, that is a lithium-ion battery. Now, you may have heard of lithium-ion batteries recently because in laptop computers, they've been known to catch fire and blow up. Well, this one hasn't blown up yet, hasn't caught fire, but this computer was plugged in all last night, most of today, and it's still sitting at about 19% charge. What's it going to take to get this thing to 100% charge? Now, maybe I didn't condition the battery correctly. You're supposed to let them drain and recharge them, but surely this thing's been plugged in for as long as 5 days. It never gets over 37%. Now, what's this got to do with motoring in cars? Simply that just about every manufacturer here at this Detroit Auto Show thinks that lithium-ion batteries are going to power our cars in the very near future. Well, based on my experience with this computer over the last few days, I don't think so. This thing will tell me it's got 1 hour and 17 minutes of use available to it. 15 minutes later, it goes into hibernation and I'm stranded. Now, if I've got a lithium-ion battery-powered car and I have to go out on some dark and stormy night, the system tells me I've got 250 kilometers to drive, no problem. I get 50K from home and the thing craps out. Then what do? Well, I call the CAA is what I do. The biggest problems with electric cars are well known. Number one, trying to find a long enough extension cord. The second problem with electric cars is that there are 3 types of liars in the world: liars, damned liars, and battery engineers. I'm Jim Kenzie.
You know, I'll never be able to afford one, but I've also never made a secret of the fact that I just love getting behind the wheel of a Porsche. Sure, there's been a few low moments over the years, like when they went from air to water-cooled engines and then came out with an SUV with a Porsche badge with the Cayenne, but history has proven they made the right decisions. And look at this 2009 911. I mean, it has design cues that go as far back as when the first 911 was introduced 45 years ago, and the car is still a head turner. As far as I'm concerned, it is still the ultimate sports car. Now, before we go, make sure you check out motoringtv.com for any programs you may have missed on TSN, and also you can watch Graham test drive vehicles far back as 1988. And also get involved with our Car of the Year poll. Among other things, you'll get a chance to win some swag. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Base pricing is right. The sport looks really good, and like I say, the European influence on it is probably a really big thing. They're going to fight hard, though. Hyundai always does. That's been their big thing, right? Since over the last 5 years, is that they come in with these products that are just absolute home runs, and they really sort of scare the competition.
Motoring 2009 on TSN has been brought to you by the new Q Horsepower from Quaker State. Unleash all your horses. And Michelin, a better way forward.